So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Rwby. So let's start the series. The fire was still burning, its embers dancing at the top as the flame crackled on the fuel. There were a few stones big enough to serve as chairs around the fire, but everything else was completely dark. Long shadows behind the backs of the two-seated people melted into the night. The sixth headmaster did so despite being aware of the consequences of someone's core energy reserve being depleted. He had come to terms with the fact that he would die, and that his passing would somehow help Hyde Ninja Village survive. As soon as he had fallen into the shadows, the memories of his teacher and friends surfaced. He assumed it was about time. The sixth headmaster was even more shocked to discover another person there than he was to discover a little bonfire in the middle of nowhere. The silver hair and the white short left sleeve with red triangles on it immediately drew his notice, even though the person was wearing a standard-issue gown and flak jacket. The sixth headmaster didn't need to question himself. After sitting there for long, neither of them had said anything. The sixth headmaster had no idea how much time had gone by. In this realm, he wasn't even certain that time existed. There he waited. The voice then appeared. Who would have thought that you and I would die so early? Although it was deeper than his own, the speech and accent were identical. The sixth headmaster simply sagged his shoulders and continued to observe the flickering flame without replying. The voice said, although not as early as your mother, once more. The sixth headmaster answered without shifting his stance. Father, I've always wanted to ask you something. The sixth headmaster did not return the gesture when he felt his father's gaze swivel to face him. Why did someone like you, who was known as the White Fang of the Leaf, choose to ignore the village code and abandon a crucial mission in order to save his comrades? Before continuing, he paused at the thought of that one fatal night. The sixth headmaster felt his teeth clenched. If you hadn't done so, no one would have condemned you, and you wouldn't have become so miserable, he said. I felt so bitter. Again, the silence was broken by the crackling of the fire. There was no reason to be angry here, so the sixth headmaster eased up and slouched down again. What good would it do? They were dead, after all. Tsukumo made the decision to respond. I see, you took it pretty hard, didn't you? Yeah, acknowledged sixth headmaster with a nod. But you know, whatever the outcome, I know you did your best. From the corner of his eyes, he sensed his father's shocked expression. The sixth headmaster never imagined seeing that look. He looked up to his father, who was the ninja's sixth headmaster wanted to be. Even though he was referred to as a prodigy when he was younger, the sixth headmaster always tried to surpass him in order to catch up. He didn't understand why his father would do such a thing, and then everything simply came apart. A dumb thing. Didn't the village's needs come before everything else? He was despised by the sixth headmaster. His father embarrassed himself to death, although he was not even a ninja who lost his life in combat. But then Toby and Rin appeared during the Third Shinobi War. In addition to failing to keep his crew safe, sixth headmaster was unable to grant a final request. As the sixth headmaster said, I can see that now and I finally understand. Remorse started to rear its ugly head once more. You broke the code to save everyone, and I'm proud of you for it. After a while of silence, the sixth headmaster heard it. Thank you. Saying that made his chest feel much lighter. Even though he knew that was impossible, the sixth headmaster didn't want to die with regrets. He had let Sasuke down, and if Hyde Ninja Village survived, he would never see Sakura teach the next generation of shinobi the art of medical ninjutsu, or see Naruto ascend to the position of Hokage. Abruptly, he felt something slam into his back and encircle his body. It had a type of green aura that was almost uplifting rather than hurting. The sixth headmaster hurried to his feet and observed the proceedings. The sixth headmaster asked, more to himself, what's this? Looks like it was too early for you to come here, his father said, merely grinning slightly. There must be something you're still meant to do. Father. As his smile widened a little, Tsukumo added, I'm glad we got to talk, thank you for forgiving me. Now I can move on in peace. The sixth headmaster was quickly drawn upward by the light before he could react. It was getting dark and his father was getting smaller in the distance. The sixth headmaster's eyes opened abruptly as he regained consciousness. He winced and closed his scarred left eye, when his red eye power abruptly rocketed his core energy. Why did everything smell like salt and he felt so wet? When he sat up and glanced around, he discovered unexpected things. He didn't identify the landmark, thus this wasn't Hyde Ninja Village. It was night, with the stars shining gloriously in the sky, rather than daytime as it had been when he had fought pain. There was a forest with big trees that were rustling in the breeze to his left. The unusually big moon that appeared to have broken, with its fragments remaining where it cracked, was what startled him the most. The sixth headmaster could only look at it in disbelief. What? He had a lot on his mind as he sat there in shallow water, gazing at the broken moon. Other than that, nothing seemed unusual. The water was clear enough for him to see the sand underneath, and the trees appeared as they should. The sixth headmaster could feel the cold from the damp area of his hair as the wind blew gently through it. He groaned, lowered the headband over the scarred eye, and got to his feet, splattering the water. The sixth headmaster was certain that this was not a work of folk art. He was still drowsy and exhausted, which may have been caused by being revived or by death, providing him with enough vitality to keep him alive. He made the decision to paddle sloppily across the waves to shore. As he walked, the soft mud felt under his sandals, printing the steps. The sixth headmaster took another look around him before running into the woods. Towering trees covered the sky, reminding sixth headmaster of home. Because there were no man-made dirt roads, he had to walk cautiously and make the most of the light that was available. The moon's beams peeked through the spaces between the moving leaves and lighted the grass in a way that was almost fascinating. Sixth headmaster chose to camp for the night after he eventually found himself in the center of a small clearing, exhausted from the low core energy reserve and his garment soaked. In the morning, he would search for civilization of some kind. The sixth headmaster collected a few parched branches and grouped them in one place. To stop the fire from spreading, he arranged the stones in a circle. He collected a tiny bit of core energy and ignited a tiny flame on the sticks. In a matter of seconds, the fire glowed, came to life, and flickered its light all around it. The sixth headmaster removed the Jounin vest and opened its compartment to get a scroll. After unfolding it, he put his touch on the central swirl, which was a seal. A stack of well-folded clothing appeared with a burst of smoke. Even though all of his outfits were identical, he always had a fresh pair with him, he thought with a smile. Sixth headmaster slumped back to a tree and fell asleep, surrounded by soft grass, a warm fire, and new cozy garments. Hunting now wouldn't feel very pleasant, but at least he wasn't hungry. His nap, that is, didn't last long. When a burning stench reached the sixth headmaster's delicate nostrils, he woke up. He had ninja instincts, even for someone who had recently resurrected. Given how many S-rank ninja assignments he was given back then, it's not like sixth headmaster had ever needed much sleep. He was constantly attentive. The sixth headmaster quickly lifted himself from the tree and turned to face the direction of the odor. He quickly sealed his old clothing and extinguished the flames before running away. The scent of burning flesh and houses grew stronger as he approached. Sixth headmaster could never adjust to the latter, regardless of how long he had been in the field. Both men and women could be heard screaming, but the roars alarmed him more. They sounded more like animals or creatures of monstrosity than any animal he was familiar with. He observed the fire and numerous ebony creatures skulking around, preying on the residents of the flaming town. The creatures had the appearance of bears, boars, and some kind of humanoid wolf with spikes all over their body. They all wore some kind of white mask with red markings, even though they all had the appearance of ink. They also had a dazzling crimson glow in their eyes. But the fact that sixth headmaster couldn't detect any life in them, almost as if they weren't alive, perplexed him. Jayahaha. Sixth headmaster was watching a man being pulled with his legs trapped in the bear's jaw when he heard the cry. His right arm was twisted and thrashing about the floor, and his torso was covered with cuts and blood. Another monster leaped on sixth headmaster before he could respond, easily tearing him to pieces. The sixth headmaster scowled at the scene, but he chose to enter the community covertly, because the animals didn't appear to notice him. Helping the villagers escape would be preferable to fending off the overwhelming amount of monsters, because his core energy was still low. He heard the clatter of metal hitting metal, steel against flesh. The sixth headmaster observed the villagers using pitchforks, knives, sickles, and staffs to try to repel the beasts. Some, who were most likely guards, even carried swords and spears. Some unfortunate stoves or fireplaces must have been on because the houses were burning, and the sixth headmaster hadn't noticed the animals spouting fire. During the show, he saw that the weapons appeared to just bounce off the monsters, which he assumed were made of extraordinarily strong hider bones. The invasion must have been recent because the majority of the settlement was still standing. With everything going on, nobody really bothered to look at the sixth headmaster, but he had had enough and let it be known by jumping down. The street where the creatures were was littered with corpses. Although the sixth headmaster didn't want to know how long it lasted, the inhabitants created a type of defense line that kept the creatures at bay. He heard someone crying from the nearest dilapidated house, so he headed straight for it. Sixth headmaster lifted the fallen planks and debris out of the way, and noticed a woman holding a child near her, a body lying there with blood spots all over it, and the bottom part entirely smashed by rubble. The lady, who appeared to be in her 20s and whose husband had most likely been murdered, was cautiously extended a hand by the sixth headmaster. She gave him a scared face, but as he smiled at her, she calmed a little. Crash. When the roof abruptly collapsed, the mom cried out, "Ahhhhh," and pulled her infant closer. When it hit his arm, the sixth headmaster grunted but managed to hold it. Suddenly, there was a growl and a claw slapping down at him. He ran forward to reach the two instead of jumping backward, put his hands around them, and then, with a little surge of inner energy, sixth headmaster leaped up. A short distance away, he landed with the two still in his arms. He noticed the anthropomorphic wolf roaring angrily as it stared back at him. The throne was close by, and he wasn't going to fight with someone holding on to him if he had to. The defense line appeared to have been pushed back, and everyone would undoubtedly perish if he didn't assist them in battling these threats. The sixth headmaster sighed slightly. He had just been revived, but he had work to do. With a rush of wind, he drove the couple toward the citizens using a basic one-handed seal. He knew she would quickly regain her balance despite the woman's yelp. 2 more wolves appeared as he prepared for battle, and his fingers pulled a steel kunai from the pouch. These were more intelligent since they did not charge immediately as he had observed with the others. How annoying. Before he could walk over and assist with the others, he would need to take care of these first. The final creature continued to observe the 6th headmaster, while the 2 creatures separated and tried to flank him from both sides. The 6th headmaster used the momentum to cut at the beast's left leg, as the claws both swiped simultaneously, and he dodged and swung his body sideways, switching the kunai to a reverse grip. 6th headmaster's physical strength was no slouch, even without core energy. He sliced through with sufficient force, but he was unable to chop off the kunai's limb due to its length. With an angry cry, it flung its other arm downward, and the other one attempted the same motion. Without wasting any of his speed, the 6th headmaster leaped onto the afflicted person's neck and stabbed it. He left a trail of smoke behind him as he pulled the blade down along his spine. It let out a cry and futilely thrashed its arms in an attempt to strike him. When he saw that the lower body was the thinnest portion of its build, the 6th headmaster sliced through it and stopped it. The creature fell to the ground, shuddered, and vanished in smoke. In the first place, were these objects alive? They almost seemed like a summons of sorts. When that thing's friend attacked him, he broke off his thought. 6th headmaster was able to easily avoid the careless strikes, making a few minor wounds here and there, but you need a powerful last blow to eliminate these creatures. The third one from the pack started sprinting towards 6th headmaster, just as he was ready to chop off its head. 6th headmaster searched for the nearest thing to replace him, because he had little space to move while in the air. When 6th headmaster landed far away, he noticed a broken barrel where he had been only a moment before. The one that had just attacked him appeared larger, with more spikes sticking out from its arms, as he looked back at the 2 monsters. The wolves that were attacking the villagers suddenly shifted their attention to him after it howled into the night sky like a wolf. Beneath the mask, the 6th headmaster frowned. Additionally, things simply become more difficult. He noticed that the bears were still wreaking devastation, killing both men and women, as well as any youngsters they could get their hands on, despite the fact that the villagers had actually been able to overcome some of the smaller boar beasts. A little rest allowed him to regain enough energy for perhaps a few spirit arts, according to the 6th headmaster's assessment of his core energy reserve. Since they still acted like animals, these beings only needed a strike that was powerful enough to kill them, and the head should do it. The 6th headmaster only had to attach the exploding tags to their masks, after taking them out of his leg bag. For a brief surge of speed, he concentrated some core energy into his feet. The 6th headmaster slapped the tags onto the monster's masks after charging ahead over the nearest ones. He moved too quickly for them to respond. They charged at their target, with many more waiting for the 6th headmaster. Sticking tags as he went from monster to creature, he dodged and swung around in midair. To get away from the gang, the 6th headmaster flipped. The explosive tags all flashed at once with a single hand sign flick. Dust and wind swirled everywhere. The 6th headmaster observed pieces and limbs flying, creating smoke trails. The ground was scorched in black soot, and when it cleared, decapitated and severed monsters fell to the ground and vanished. But the biggest wolf made it out alive. The 6th headmaster saw the ripped tag and narrowed his eyes. It surprised him even more when it ran at him much more quickly than its siblings. The 6th headmaster leaped to dodge the low claw. It turned completely and slashed back at his torso. The 6th headmaster flew backwards and grunted when he felt the punch. He stabbed the kunai into the ground with a body turn, then spun like a clock to release the momentum. Before striking a wooden box, a boar lunged at him from the side. With one hand gripping the soiled kunai and the other clutching at the gushing wound, the 6th headmaster stumbled back. With so many of these beasts left, he wasn't sure if he would survive, and his breathing had begun to struggle. He was going to make another hand seal when a bear suddenly jumped at him and began to be hit by arrows. Behind him, he heard some shouting from the villagers. The people started charging forward with their weapons in hand, much to the surprise of the 6th headmaster. They repelled the monsters by forming a line in front of him. After taking a few deep breaths, the 6th headmaster pointed at the final wolf standing and withdrew a second kunai. Even though he couldn't comprehend a word they were saying, he noticed a few nods from the crowd, suggesting they understood. He had run out of tags, but assuming army regulations were the same, he only had to murder the commander. 6th headmaster stepped upon someone's shoulder and hurled himself directly at the beast he was aiming for. Barrages of arrows teetered back the many animals that rushed to him. With claws ready, the wolf also leaped at him in an attack. It roared like an animal and opened its jaw. The spikes grew longer and more deadly. The 6th headmaster diverted the ivory bones, making holes as they went. In fact, he didn't think these objects possessed any essential components like a real live organism would. Even with the occasional cut, the monster was unfazed and wasn't growing weaker. He was unable to continue. The 6th headmaster plunged between its legs, piercing its joints as 2 arms descended for a smash. He was suddenly thrown backward after receiving a forceful kick to the torso. When the wall of the village received the brunt of the force, he paused. The sixth headmaster quickly replaced himself with a piece of wooden board as the wolf quickly pivoted and lunged. His kunais had begun to chip away, and he was now breathing heavily. When the beast struck again, he had no time to consider. Unsurprisingly, when the sixth headmaster threw some shurikens at it, they simply bounced off like some irritation. Oh, screw it. The sixth headmaster blasted fire pellets at the roaring beast through several hand seals. The wolf stumbled from the hits, and it worked. With both hands clutching a kunai for a thrust, he ran. The monster howled in agony as it went all the way through to its rear. When it waved its arms violently, the sixth headmaster instantly released his grip. He poked at his feet with two kunais and nailed them in place. The other hand curled its fingers as he grabbed at its lower jaw and yanked it open, causing lightning to form as core energies started to build up in the center. More than anything else that night, the chirping of 1,000 birds reverberated. Sixth headmaster pushed the focus ball of energy down its throat in a manner that bordered on cruel. The interior of its body glowed, and it quickly burst into dust. Everything became calm as he allowed the Chidori to die out. When the sixth headmaster noticed the people's shocked expressions, the dark creatures only stared at him without moving, only to entirely abandon their prior activities and gang up on him in a matter of seconds. The sixth headmaster charged at the remnants after picking up a random blade from the ground. These were significantly slower, and there weren't many left. They joined in after the populace awoke from their daze. They were able to eliminate every last creature before dawn. The only items left on the ground were either human remains or rubbish because they didn't leave carcasses. By this time, the sixth headmaster was kneeling on one knee and wheezing, barely holding on to the broken blade. His core energy level was critically low, his clothes and Jian and Jack were torn, and blood was streaming freely from his wounds. Before allowing darkness to take him as he fell, he took another look at the broken moon. Outside, sunshine filtered through the glass pane, and birds were chirping from a tree branch. A mild breeze and the subtle aroma of nature filled the space. When the sixth headmaster gently opened his eyes, he saw a green ceiling with a fan rotating peacefully counterclockwise. After blinking many times, he looked around. His body was now covered by a bed sheet that was soft and cozy, like cotton and sheep's wool. But there was something lacking from his face. The sixth headmaster raised a hand to feel the absence of his mask, as he felt the airbrush across his lips and nose. The sixth headmaster scowled. He disliked having his mask touched. The sixth headmaster grumbled and attempted to get up. He felt as though he had been bedridden for days because of how heavy his body felt. It was not a new sensation, but he had experienced it before. The sixth headmaster observed himself by leaning back against the headboard of the bed. He was dressed in a bulky shirt with short sleeves and an unbuttoned neck. The bandages that covered his wounds were underneath. At least they were no longer painful. There were little bruises and scuffs on his arms. The room was plain, with a single bed and an end table beside it, a tray with a water cup and a flower vase on top. His typical attire, however, was fully repaired and hung on the opposite far side of the room. The sixth headmaster gave himself a little smile of gratitude. With a little effort, the sixth headmaster grabbed a glass of water and drank it. The relief of a dry throat was a welcome change. He set the blanket aside and lowered the cup. Sixth headmaster got up and took a big breath, placing his feet firmly on the wooden floor. With a sigh, he stretched his arms and gazed out the window. According to the height, his room was on the second floor. The sixth headmaster saw the individuals going about their daily lives. Many of them were carrying supplies and tools for building. It didn't appear to be a tiny village, but it also wasn't as big as Hyde Ninja Village. It was a serene location where human architecture coexisted with nature. It was like home to him in a way. With almost no clouds and a deep blue sky, the sun was almost at its zenith. What a lovely day. Creak. When a female who was a few years older than his students entered with a tray in hand, the sixth headmaster glanced around in alarm but became calm. She had fresh bandages and a clean glass of water with her. The girl was dressed simply in a white dress with a scarlet shawl draped over her shoulders and a brown belt around the waist. When she saw him, she halted. She said, "Oh, Uayurikawa," with excitement. The sixth headmaster gave a foolish blink, not understanding a word she had just uttered. "Ha," was the only thing he said. She put the tray down and picked up the empty glass, but the girl didn't appear to hear. She went on to say, "I thought you'd be Nipil's Naira Frino. Imiman si loan, I even eat Nikaderak for Uwai." Sixth headmaster, still unable to understand her words, saw something else. Two appendages that resembled animal ears were on her head. She had some kind of squirrel-like bushy tail behind her cloak. He questioned whether anyone else in this country was like her. He had witnessed plenty of ninjas with animal features. In fact, the 9 tails had given Rwby whisker marks from birth. The sixth headmaster started to say, but was cut off. She was standing directly in front of him, holding out her hand as though she was waiting for him to do something. With a small laugh, the sixth headmaster said, excuse me, and held out a hand halfway. "I can't understand what you are saying." Her eyes narrowed, her hands moved to her hips, and her ears pricked up as she gave him a bewildered expression. Tau gognali ruoinikups. Nakuoinivnis rednuem. The sixth headmaster started to respond, but he was at a loss for words. He simply scratched his head and attempted an amusing smile. With a sigh, the girl swished her tail behind her. She gave him a finger and said, "Okay, Tyler." She then turned around and walked out of the room, with the door closing immediately behind her. At least the sixth headmaster comprehended the term okay, so that was a start. He simply shrugged. When she was gone, he took off the shirt to examine the bandages, which were well wrapped without being too tight or loose. Sixth headmaster changed the gauze himself, without waiting for the female to return. After finishing all of that, he put on his old clothes that he had taken from the hook. The sixth headmaster felt considerably more at ease wearing the mask in its proper location, and it fit flawlessly as it always had. He covered the red eye power eye by sliding the headband down. The sixth headmaster was so hungry that he stood at the window for a while with both hands in his pockets. He prayed that he would soon be able to eat or else he might pass away once more. The death would be far less heroic. The girl came back with another tray, but this time it had food. It appeared to be a steaming cup of oatmeal. When she noticed him, she halted and arched an eyebrow, tilting her head. The sixth headmaster simply gave a nice wave. When the girl put down the tray, he might have heard a little hiss, perhaps directed at him rather than the heat. She simply made a commanding motion, pointing at the dish. At her actions, the sixth headmaster raised his own lone brow. Did she think he would pay attention? She wasn't his hookage, even though she was attractive. The girl gathered his old bandages and other stray items, and walked out the door without seeming to care. There, the sixth headmaster stood contemplating his options. Although it would be impolite, he could easily leave this village and flee in some direction. He probably recovered from the monstrous trouble with the help of these people. So far, their hospitality had been pleasant. In addition, that dish of porridge looked delicious, and he was hungry. The sixth headmaster put his hands together and thanked them silently for the food, which was consumed quickly. When she finally returned, she gestured to the door, and the sixth headmaster simply shrugged and followed her instructions. An older man who appeared to be entirely normal, no animal ears or anything, was waiting for him. He wore trousers that reached his ankles and a shirt with side buttons. His graying hair and noticeable facial skin lines revealed a lot about the elderly man. "Ah, I see that you are awake and well," the man said, raising his head. With at least a head and a half, the sixth headmaster was comfortably taller than him. He had a deep, slightly rough, although not overly grumpy voice. At last, though, he was able to comprehend someone. "Yes, I must thank you for taking care of me," said the sixth headmaster, grinning. He made a curt bow with his hands still within. After saying, "Please do not trouble yourself with such," the man waved. "If anything, we are indebted to you. Had you not shown up that night, I'm not sure if the village would still be standing." He gave a motion toward the room of the sixth headmaster. "And she's the one who took care of you in the past 3 days. She is a student from our village's doctor." He had been out there for a while since the sixth headmaster appeared surprised. Later, he should thank her. When the man said, "Ah, but where are my manners?" the sixth headmaster took notice. "My name is Telvi Astralin." "Sixth headmaster," was his straightforward response. "Just sixth headmaster." Telvi said, "Very well, please follow me," and turned to face the stairs. "Our village's elder wishes to speak with you." The sixth headmaster followed the man with a simple shrug and relaxed shoulders. He observed people eating, drinking, and chatting near the bar on the lowest floor, which was essentially a mess hall. This was probably an inn, then. Only a few people lived there, and the lone waitress walked around the empty tables, wiping them down. He was somehow recognized by the few people present, who mouthed something while waving at him. Like the girl he met, they talked in a language he didn't comprehend. The sixth headmaster simply gave a kind gesture in reply. The sixth headmaster was finally able to see the settlement in its entirety after leaving the hostel. The main road led to a big round building farther in from what appeared to be the town's gate. Both sides were lined with stores, both big and little, next to one another. In some ways, the sixth headmaster believed it resembled Hyde Ninja Village, minus the excessive number of people strolling around. People were seen here, but they wouldn't clog the roadway. The sixth headmaster glanced in the direction that several employees were heading. Many of the houses that had been damaged were being rebuilt. While those with able bodies carried heavy beams and boards of wood, others shouted back and forth. Buildings were also put together with stone. He retraced his steps and carried on with Telvi. Walking a few meters ahead of the sixth headmaster, Telvi said, "So I suppose you must have some questions." "Yes," the headmaster of the sixth acknowledged. He truly missed being able to read a book while talking, damn it. "I can't understand what it is that people have been speaking. Do the citizens here speak a different language?" Telvi laughed and answered, "No, it is quite the opposite. The people here are speaking a common tongue. You, however, are not." The sixth headmaster simply cocked his head in perplexity. "So then, how do you speak what it is that I use?" "To be honest, I am surprised myself," replied Telvi, "but if you truly do not know, it is Mistroli you are speaking, an old tongue." It is not forgotten, I assure you, but not very common anymore, not outside of Mistral at least. Both Mistrali and Mistral. Since the sixth headmaster had never heard of the name, he assumed that if Talvi's statement was accurate, he should see himself as such. Your name tells me that you are from our neighboring kingdom of the east, Talvi said. Do tell, which part of Mistral did you hail from? Was the sixth headmaster's unsure response. Hell, he had no idea what this village was called. Well, there was no harm in trying. Hide Ninja Village, to the south. It's gone now though. Talvi said, I see, my condolence, with sincerity. So, what made you come to Lakestone? Or were you just a passerby? The name of the village is Lakestone. The sixth headmaster said, scratching his chin. He would have to come up with something. Nothing, I was just lost on the road of life. He assumed that old habits die hard. Talvi paused and gave him a disbelieving look before letting out a loud laugh. He shook his head and started walking again. Well, whatever your reason may be, we are lucky people indeed. Nevertheless, here we are. They came to a halt before a pair of doors, and Talvi invited the sixth headmaster inside by sliding one open. As he did so, he noticed that another set was leading up upstairs. Other than the paintings on the walls, the rooms were empty. They resembled those from fairy stories or mythology. The depictions of the dark monsters, this time in more varied shapes than those he had previously seen, were particularly intriguing. Talvi said, please head up, the elder is waiting for you, and pointed to the stairs. He said, I shall be waiting down here in my office. And walked away toward a nearby door. With a nod, the sixth headmaster walked over to the round wooden staircase. There were other paintings hanging along the wall, but these resembled a timeline. A village developed after a group of people were drawn to a new area to live. The creatures then started to appear. First, there weren't many, but as paintings were added, the number grew. They were overpowered at one point, but the village remained hopeful. Warriors appeared, each brandishing a unique weapon. People continued to live after they killed the monsters. The others were empty, almost like an incomplete story, and that was the last one the sixth headmaster viewed. At the end of the stairway, he noticed another door and opened it. Inside, the space was far larger than he had anticipated. The space was well lit thanks to the wide windows. On his side of the wall was a large bookcase, and there were potted plants in every corner. There was a big desk at the far end of the room with a big map behind it. The elder was discovered sitting on the other side, painting on a canvas, by the sixth headmaster. The sixth headmaster confronted the elder as he whirled on his stool. He was taken aback by his initial impression. The man was younger than he had anticipated, most likely in his early 50s. He was dressed in a plain ivory robe with some color decorations. He had spectacles that sat on the bridge of his nose, and his black hair was tied up in a tail. He said, welcome, with a warm greeting and a smile stretching across his lips. I am Morin Darrell, this village's elder. His response was, sixth headmaster, you wanted to see me? Yes, Morin said, getting to his feet and setting the paintbrush on the palette. He gestured to a seat in front of the desk and moved to the chair behind it. But first, please sit down, sixth headmaster. The sixth headmaster followed the advice. He sat with his hands still in his pockets in the cozy leather chair. He bided his time until the man opened his mouth. Morin placed his hands together and said, first, I must express my gratitude on behalf of the townspeople. We were not expecting such a huge amount of Grim attack 3 nights ago. Grim? The Black Ones. Did they have that name? The name suited them well, thought the sixth headmaster. As Morin went on, he nodded. We lost many good people that night, Morin sorrowfully stated, but with the luck of fate, you came out of nowhere and slain them. I wasn't aware of any huntsmen operating nearby. Are you from Haven by any chance? The sixth headmaster gave a shrug. Was there really anything to lose, he wondered, and should he answer honestly? A huntsman. A hunter of some sort who hunted out the grim creatures. Haven. Was it a city? Leaning forward, Morin studied sixth headmaster. You're not from around here, are you? No, he said, letting his seat drop. I'm just someone who's lost. I see, Morin said, raising an eyebrow in interest before his face softened. Well, do you know where you are then? The sixth headmaster gave a headshake. Morin turned his chair so that sixth headmaster could get a better look at the map. It included roughly 6 significant landmarks. They have peculiar shapes. In contrast to the elemental nations, the most of them are quite slender and dispersed. He couldn't really put his finger on it, but they seemed like animals or something. However, he was now positive that he had been flung into another reality. Remnant, as the world is called, and we are here, in the Kingdom of Vale, Morin said, placing a finger on the area of the map, positioned close to the center. The community close to the huge mountain range. An invisible circle was drawn by his pointer as it moved upward to the left. This is the city of Vale, the capital. It's also where the Huntsman's School, Beacon Academy, resides. The sixth headmaster absorbed the information and nodded. He had the impression that he was once more a student at the Hyde Ninja Village Academy. He graduated early for a variety of reasons, including his dislike of his peers' weakness and slowness, which is somewhat nostalgic. Being kept back annoyed him. He was a snooty child, so what could he say? When he was 12, that conceit finally got the better of him. The sixth headmaster sighed inwardly and brushed the thoughts away. The area west of Vale was known as Vacuo, once the largest deposit of dust, but now a barren wasteland. Morin gestured up. And lastly, he said, referring to the continent with the enormous hole in the center, Atlas. An isolated and cold region with the most advanced technology. Mistral, the land of diverse cultures and artistry. Said the sixth headmaster, pointing with his finger. What about the other ones? Morin touched the southernmost point of the landmass. This here is Menagerie, a secluded home for the Faunas. Faunas? That is, animals. Just like the girl that took care of him. What about that one, said the sixth headmaster, focusing his lone eye on the strange-looking continent that loomed over Vacuo. Simple, we know nothing about it. That place still remained a mystery till this day, replied Morin. Before he sat down again, he gazed at the sixth headmaster for quite some time. He twiddled his fingers at a nearby cup of tea, which was chilly rather than heated. Morin gazed out the window and took a sip. You're really far away from home, aren't you? The sixth headmaster let out a sigh and nodded. Yeah, very far. Do you wish to go back? At that, the sixth headmaster halted. A part of him hoped to return to the Leaf Village, so he could see what had transpired. He was reminded by the other part that he was prepared to die at that moment. He realized that until he was brought back to life as a pawn, there was no way out. But here he was, still alive, conversing with a new acquaintance. Did the sixth headmaster still have a purpose? His father was almost always right. He genuinely wanted to believe that. There were some positive aspects to his life, but overall it had not been all sunshine and rainbows. In fact, now that he thinks about it, it's been utterly awful. For a shinobi, it was already uncommon to live past 30. The sixth headmaster was aware that he had repeatedly made blunders and lost a lot. In fact, he joined Rwby immediately following the Nine Tails attack, when he was at his lowest. He managed to escape though, because the third Hokage hadn't injured him. The sixth headmaster did everything in his power to keep Hyde Ninja Village safe. After a while, he found himself facing 3 recently graduated genins. The sixth headmaster saw a peek of the future when they became the first children to pass his test. Once more, he made a mistake by ignoring a gifted kunoichi and his sensei's son, in favor of someone who was determined to get retribution. He assumed that Sasuke reminded the sixth headmaster of himself. Sakura was initially merely an extra, and the third told him to train him and control Naruto's seal. In hindsight, he wasn't a good instructor to Team 7. If he hadn't submitted them for the Chunin exam, things could have turned out differently. But in the end, he experienced some sense of atonement. Not even the fourth headmaster had been able to see Naruto complete the Rasengan, but the sixth had. Even though Naruto was unaware of it, the villagers had already started to positively mention him in whispers following the attack of Hyde Ninja Village. Their gratitude increased with every mission that was accomplished. If he succeeded in defeating Pain, the village would welcome the hero they had previously rejected. His will of fire blazed fiercely, and the sixth headmaster believed that Naruto would one day become the Hokage. The sixth headmaster grinned a little to himself as he observed the birds soaring beyond the window. He was proud of himself for the first time in his life. He was certain that he had assisted in sowing the seed that would grow into a lovely garden. That he wouldn't be able to see it is unfortunate. He turned back to Morin to respond, but the elder of the community stopped him with a hand gesture. There's no need, he said, taking a slow drink of the tea. I can see that you have lived through a hard life, an answer is not necessary. Here at Lakestone, you are always welcomed. The sixth headmaster nodded a grateful eye smile, despite blinking at the explanation or lack thereof. Since he had earned some rest, he assumed that the dead should remain where they were. The image of the grim monsters clambered back into his mind. How had the town survived if they were so ferocious as to attack the village in such large numbers? Hunters. The village, said sixth headmaster, attracting Morin's interest. How did it survive for so long with all those creatures attacking? Ah, said Morin. When our scouts spot a large number of Grimm, we would send a request to Beacon Academy for huntsmen, and they provide this service. Their students do need the experience after all. The sixth headmaster gave a nod. It seemed like the straightforward supply and demand model used in Hyde Ninja Village. Though the name alone suggested prestige, he was intrigued by its academy. The sixth headmaster asked, what about those grim things from the night before? Morin let out a long sigh. Sometimes the lack of huntsmen requires more time for their arrival. Many places have fell to the grim that way. After all, only few ever chose the life of a huntsman. Vale itself does not have a military unlike Atlas. We just make do with what we have. I see, the sixth headmaster reflected. In his opinion, the concept of not having a real military is absolutely terrible. Shinobis are effective soldiers, if that's what they were designed for. It is ingrained in the elemental nation's way of life and culture. In contrast to this planet remnant, people killed one another rather than some barbaric and vicious animals. Part of him wanted to explore the countryside, even if he enjoyed the thought of settling down. He continued with a detached expression. We did ask for assistance a little over a week ago, we have yet to receive a response, he said. It's not uncommon, we don't live too far from the kingdom, so help just arrives a bit on the late side. Killing the Grim was a C rank or B rank mission, therefore it was fair. Sixth Headmaster thought it would be higher if there was something much more powerful and a real danger. That made him realize that he needed money. He doubted the currency would work, but he always had some emergency Ryo on hand. He could be able to work for himself as one of these huntsmen. The sixth headmaster had a great deal of confidence in his skill set. The sixth headmaster tilted his head in that direction and asked, "So is it what those paintings are? The village's history?" The man nodded and laughed. "Very much so. Every time when a noteworthy occasion happens, the elders record it through paintings. It's a tradition now." The sixth headmaster glanced at the work in progress and said, "Ah." He could see the painted portion, though it was incomplete. He identified the black creatures as Grim, and he saw that someone was using lightning in his palm to battle them. "That's you," Morin smiled and confirmed. It was quite a sight to behold. "I didn't know dust could be used like that, or was it a semblance for lightning?" "Air? Dust?" Something concerning the entire vacuole land was addressed by the man. "Was it energy fuel of some sort? What about semblance? What the devil was that?" The sixth headmaster merely gave an uncertain smile. "Something like that." "That reminds me," Morin said, grabbing his interest. He got up and went to a cupboard to get something. The sixth headmaster sensed a kind of fine cloth when it fell into his hands. "A thank you gift from me personally." Spreading it apart, the sixth headmaster discovered that it was a pretty thick scarf with the river logo blazoned on one end. In contrast to his typical navy blue attire, it was light blue in hue. The sixth headmaster looked earnestly and said, "Thank you." He couldn't recall the last time he experienced gratitude on a daily basis. The sensation pleased him much. "It is of no trouble," the man said, glancing at a nearby clock. "I have taken much of your time today. Perhaps you should take a stroll through our village. We may not be sizable, but I assure you will find many things to your liking." The headmaster of the sixth simply shrugged. Morin laughed once again. "The room you were at is yours to use however you like. Please don't refrain from asking. Should the language barrier becomes a problem, we have people who are capable to teach you." The sixth headmaster sighed in his mind, meaning that he was once again a student. But as if he had a say in the matter. He nodded curtly to Morin and got up, the gift in one hand. Morin said, "I hope you find your stay enjoyable and accommodating," as she said goodbye. The sixth headmaster simply gave him a smile before leaving the room. He must be working because he didn't spot Telvi on his way out. He made the decision to return to his room. He would visit the library later in the day to obtain some books that he could comprehend. If not, he would need to hire a translation. How annoying, really. Hours before, as the sun had set behind the western mountains, the broken moon had replaced it with a dazzling brightness. Sitting on his bed, the sixth headmaster watched it. The village was as silent as a tomb. The only human sounds audible were the rustle of leaves and the blowing of winds. The room was barren and stark because he entered this world with only his own belongings. The Jounin vest and the leaf headband, the latter of which glinted in the moonlight and the former of which hung in a closet, were the only items that brought back memories of his past existence. He felt alone since no one knew him and he knew no one. He felt alienated and alone in the unfamiliar language and people. He knew that the sixth headmaster wasn't supposed to be here, but he had no other option. He was skilled at adapting, but the sixth headmaster truly missed the Leaf Village. Perhaps the elderly are speaking. So he sat there, thinking about his future while observing the moon from the comfort of his empty chamber. He was taken aback when the sixth headmaster was compensated for his work. It was also a respectable sum. At first, they had offered more, but he chose to accept less. Although he was wealthy in Hyde Ninja Village, he was never the sort to spend. He was filthily wealthy thanks to his father's bequest and all the money he received from the S-rank missions. It was a shame that everything was gone now. Lean was the name of this new money. Heart cards with a black strip on the back were the format. The technology in this universe truly amazed the sixth headmaster. Because the residents of Lakestone favored a simpler lifestyle, it was less developed than the other cities or towns. He went to the smithy with Talvi, or weapon forge as the smith liked to call it, as soon as he received his paycheck and ordered a new supply of shurikens and kunes. Fortunately, the man recognized what they were, even though the sixth headmaster wasn't first certain if it was feasible. The sixth headmaster had to get by with the few he had left because it would take several days. Meanwhile, he obtained a fairly long straight blade, which is more usually referred to as an injado. It seems that he was able to locate sophisticated weapons that improved their fighting capabilities by using the crystal dust. Other methods that were considered outdated included applying dust powder to clothing or the wielder's body. He pondered whether he could add them to his arsenal because dust was significant and they themselves carried natural elemental energy in its purest form. He possessed many spirit arts, to be sure, but it never hurt to have more. Sixth headmaster still had some money to spend because he could remain in the renting room indefinitely without worrying about payment. He therefore purchased some new clothing and equipment. Although he could battle at a distance, sixth headmaster was very skilled at close quarters. He ultimately decided on some lightweight metal arm and leg protectors that were both light enough to move quickly and powerful enough to take some hits. The sixth headmaster was never a fan of closed-toe shoes and favored sandals. His toes most likely developed a great resistance to force, even though he may have stubbed them as a child and screamed like a little wuss. He hoped, anyway. The sixth headmaster chose a grey, quite thick chest piece with metal plates inside, instead of the Hyde Ninja Village flak jacket. The sixth headmaster ended up putting his scrolls in his back pouch, because the jacket lacked any holds to secure them. He sat his ninjato by the waist, sideways, just above it. He largely maintained his appearance from his time in ninja. It wasn't cold at all, and the gentle breeze that was blowing through his silver hair made his skin feel comfortable. On a big branch that stuck out of one of the enormous trees that surrounded the area, the sixth headmaster sat. The sound of water flowing through uneven pebbles was a lullaby to his ears, as a little brook ran directly underneath it. In the distance, sixth headmaster could hear birds chirping and other wildlife sounds that he was used to. A sea of verdant trees stretched out in front of him, all the way to the distant foot of a mountain. There were very few clouds in the blue sky as the sun approached its zenith. He held a lump of rice in his palms, and sixth headmaster bit into his food without the mask blocking his view. The food was his favorite aspect of Lakestone, if there was one. In addition to being reasonably priced, the food at almost every restaurant and stand he had visited was excellent. The sixth headmaster already liked the hamlet, so it's hard to find anything he didn't like about it, other from the fact that they didn't have any committed fighters to take on the Grim. He would choose to take on the responsibility of destroying any monsters that might be hiding here, which is why he was beyond the walls. Lakestone has yet to receive the huntsman he had asked. Even though he occasionally arrived late for meetings, the headmaster of 6 was irritated by the tardiness, and would never arrive late for a mission. The other group sympathized with him. Not everyone enjoyed the risky lifestyle, which led to fewer eager participants and, ultimately, even fewer competent soldiers being sent into combat. The 6th headmaster was aware that it was awful. Many ninjas graduated, but many eventually left that life because it wasn't as glamorous as it initially appeared. The 6th headmaster had been studying the new language during his free time in the previous few days, and he carried a book in front of him. Its premise was hard to understand because it was written in the exact opposite way. For heaven's sake, these people read from left to right. Since there were Mistrali language works being translated, at least he was learning it in an academically sound manner. Taking a cue from Rwby's book, the 6th headmaster employed disguised shadow clones to engage in conversation with others, in order to foster social interaction. But unlike his student, he was unable to use it for extended periods of time or spam it carelessly. The 6th headmaster would undoubtedly become proficient in a month or two, thanks to the constant improvements. The 6th headmaster was eating when he heard something land next to him. He looked down to see a sparrow, a small bird with brown and white stripes that was short and quite plump overall. Its head jerked from side to side as its beady eyes glared at him. It was interested in his dinner, or more accurately, it desired the rice. A tiny bit was chipped by the 6th headmaster and spread out on the branch. Before he ate, he watched with curiosity as the small, feathery creature pecked at the grain. When it was done, the bird flew to his shoulder and chirped joyfully at him. The 6th headmaster simply grinned and continued. 6th headmaster wiped his hands of food scraps and shut the book after lunch. Then he pulled out a map and spread it out. The parchment had a lot of excess on it. The 6th headmaster had killed a lot of the Grim he had discovered in 3 days. At first, he tried to identify any patterns in their actions and movements, but everything suggested that there were people in the vicinity. Since he had seen a monster with intelligence, it's intriguing to know that these creatures weren't entirely dumb. Compared to their packs, those are often larger. Orbidisk, Beowulf, and Ursa were the 3 common Grim types that the 6th headmaster had observed. There were more animals in the bestiary he received, including gorillas, snakes, scorpions, and even enormous birds that resembled crows. The human and faunus populations retreated into their own kingdoms or territories, as a result of the Grim's continued dominance as a species. For more than a century, survival has been a battle. He glanced over the chart again, the mask replaced this time, his legs hanging from the limb. Nearly all of the regions had been covered. The 6th headmaster drew lines through a number of different areas of the geographic chart, and focused on areas where packs of Grim might be discovered. The 6th headmaster simply scratched the sparrow's front with a finger as it had yet to leave its contented little shoulder perch. Happily, the small creature tweeted. The 6th headmaster eased himself down the tree, bending his arms back, the map folded and stowed neatly in the pouch. The bird fanned its wings in surprise as he started to fall. In order to get to his destination as soon as possible, he hopped from branch to branch. He slowed because he could hear the bird straining to stay up. If the 6th headmaster was telling the truth, the small boy was a nice company, but he had no idea why he was being followed. When the 6th headmaster tried to call Pakin and his dogs, it hurt him. He slapped his hand down and nothing happened. He was aware that a summoning contract is null and void upon death. However, it was painful for Sixth Headmaster to understand that he would never see those trackers again, because he had raised them since they were pups. The bird nestled in his rather disheveled hair when he was slow enough. It kept chirping, and he wasn't sure if it was because it was angry. After petting its head, the Sixth Headmaster picked up the pace again. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr. He reduced his speed and stopped on a tree branch high in the air. The Sixth Headmaster noticed a gang of Borbidisks skulking around aimlessly when he looked down. In total, there were only 5 or 6 of them, and they weren't very large. He was unable to identify any source of life from his 5 human senses, thus he had to rely entirely on them to locate the Grim. He didn't have to taste or touch the area items, at least. Sixth Headmaster had become emotionally detached in his 31 years of life. Given how indifferent he was to practically everything, he hardly ever experienced intense mental states. Occasionally, feelings of loneliness and remorse would set in, but Sixth Headmaster would keep himself occupied with tasks. These Grim were drawn to bad emotions. The more intense the emotion, the more hungry they became. If these beings were invisible to his senses, then he was also invisible to them. The Sixth Headmaster was an expert at suppressing his emotions. From a distance, it would have appeared that the Grim were acting like actual animals as they scurried around, not sniffing, eating, or searching for anything in particular. But he was wiser. They would surely come to Lakestone or any human settlements in the area, if these things were allowed to go unchecked. When the ninjato unwrapped itself from the scabbard, it did not make any noise. The sword stood straight in a straight grip when the Sixth Headmaster spun it. The Sixth Headmaster hurled himself forward with the blade in both hands without hesitation. His decades of experience enabled him to execute the plan flawlessly. When it came to power, speed could magnify it far more than brute strength ever could. However, with both and the right technique, Sixth Headmaster was able to enhance the strike's potency. Before his head rolled onto the ground, the beast had lost all opportunity. At last, other Grim realized what was going on and braced themselves for the unexpected confrontation. In a conflict, both sides would be on equal footing and engage in combat. However, the Sixth Headmaster saw this as nothing more than a massacre. With a flawless killing strike, he ran between each creature. The Sixth Headmaster took advantage of the Borbidisks' robust armor, which could withstand steel, but it also exposed their undersides. From close to the handguard to the tip, his blade's sharp edge sliced as it whirled upward. The ninjato used every part of it to defeat these Grim. The Sixth Headmaster had moved to another Borbidisk that jumped in an attempt to assault him, before the other had even reached the grass. He ducked, pushed the sword up, and cut the creature in 2. As their speed increased, the 4th and 5th were speeding forward. The Sixth Headmaster stood between them and leaped. When the Grims tumbled over, their tusks entwined and they shrieked loudly as they collided. Sixth Headmaster had destroyed the creatures of their pathetic existence with 2 blows. As the smokes of his brethren started to fade, the final one circled him. He would have said that it was afraid if he hadn't known any better. Though it ran at him with its tusks dangerously pointed outward, this one most definitely lacked intelligence. The Grim was flung onto his back while its legs writhed ineffectively as the Sixth Headmaster sidestepped and grabbed the ivory bit, using its momentum to spin it. Its legs froze as steel sank into his belly. After then, there was only black smoke. After everything was finished, the Sixth Headmaster indicated the location on the map. He thought the writing instrument known as a pen to be particularly practical since, in contrast to traditional brushes, the ink was contained within and could be used for an extended period of time. Just getting acquainted to the instrument took him a few hours. The Sixth Headmaster continued the line till it came to a halt at a meeting spot. The quantity of Grim in each encounter was monitored by the Sixth Headmaster across the map. In an attempt to pinpoint the origin, he plotted the volume in ascending order. It worked similarly to a fork. Eventually, a big pack would spread itself out. When he recalled the more seasoned monsters, the Sixth Headmaster had ruled out the idea of randomization. There might have been a Grim who oversaw all of them because they behaved somewhat like the leaders of each group. Even though these creatures occasionally displayed animalistic tendencies, he was certain that alphas were present. Furthermore, no 2 alphas would govern together according to the law of nature. Sixth Headmaster recognized a relationship between excess. As he followed the pattern, he saw that they all came together at a single spot on the map. He turned to see the tallest of them all standing over the tree lines. The marsh region was laid out in the paper he was holding. For the locals, it's a no man's land. Many have left and never come back. Before he started hunting, he received warnings about that location. Given how far away it was from the town, he didn't think of it at the time. The Sixth Headmaster had no idea how long it would take to examine the marsh in its entirety. It was time for a return journey to restock. Keeping that choice in mind, he tucked the chart away and started to return to Lakestone. It wasn't until the sparrow's talons began to shuffle around that he nearly forgot about it. From its headband, its tiny head poked over and gazed at him. When he felt it wriggle a little, the Sixth Headmaster simply pushed it back with a finger and grinned to himself. Now that he had a traveling partner, he wouldn't feel as alone on such excursions. It would be something if it could speak. He arrived fast because a modest dose of core energy accelerated the journey. Within a few hours, the sixth headmaster arrived at the gate. He had to commend the staff because they quickly fixed the spot. He noticed that something was not quite right. A sort of vehicle sat just outside the wall. It was constructed of steel and had two sizable pieces that jutted out from either side like wings. There were big, slender pods at their tips, but the black portion was still exposed. On 4 tiny landing gears, the machine stood. Its tail was composed of 3 sharp segments. This contraption could fly, if the sixth headmaster had to estimate, and it's most likely utilized for transportation. He had more to be amazed about the longer he was here on Earth. What comes next? A huge mech with crazy weapons. Since nobody was in or near the car at the moment, the sixth headmaster got out of the machine and went through the gate. He was recognized by a number of individuals, who waved hello. Though hesitantly, he returns the motions. Amidst all the sounds, he sensed the sparrow peeking out and looking around. He ignored it and made his way directly to the elder's office. As he approached the door, the sixth headmaster heard a conversation taking place. He might be able to pick out a few words, but it still took a long time to understand. Keeping his civility intact, he knocked. The conversation ceased. He heard Morin say, "Come in," and opened the door. 4 other individuals were standing in front of the elder's desk when he entered. They were all in their late teens. Is it a red-headed blind child or a girl with rabbit ears? A short teenager and a tall young guy appeared to be quite stylish. The lanky child was wielding a big blade, which was the only thing the sixth headmaster could see. They must have concealed theirs. Considering how differently they all dressed, they didn't appear to be in uniform. The bunny girl wore brown slacks and a blazer with flecks of gold. Some sort of box was behind her waist. He is certain that she is a faunus because of those enormous ears. With his black leggings, orange waistcoat, and fringed copper hair, the boy next to her appeared much more unassuming. This one had numerous scars on both arms, including one that was vertically positioned near his lips. His white eyes reminded sixth headmaster of Hyuga. Hopefully, he isn't as stiff as those people. Wearing a tea-green half-robe and a shoulder guard on his left, the tall swordsman had short black hair, black boots and brown jeans. According to sixth headmaster, he appeared to be a combatant of pure might. At last, the person who has been observing him through her black spectacles. She had dark brown hair with a caramel-colored wavy lock, and she looked elegant. A cincher, a light brown long-sleeved blouse, and a black headpiece that tipped over. Was it a corset instead? Well, it's not as if he would ever comprehend women's fashion. She was dressed in rough-looking black long pants with belts hanging everywhere. There were a ton of brass-looking objects on the straps. With one hand in a closed fist against an open palm, the tall one bowed to him briefly and formally. The red-headed bunny girl bowed and gave him a curt nod. Fashion girl remained still. The sixth headmaster proceeded to Morin while idly waving at the gathering. I hope he wasn't disturbing something significant. With his fingers pressed together and his full focus on the scarecrow, Morin said, "Ah, sixth headmaster, welcome back. How fares your hunt?" The sixth headmaster replied, "Good, nothing too troublesome anyway," and pulled out his map. He laid it out on the table. He could almost sense the other people in the room were interested. Fashion girl arched an eyebrow as she gazed at the paper. It was barely visible to the sixth headmaster in his peripheral vision. "I think I found the source." He had encircled the crossroads with a huge circle. Several times. "Red." Warren whispered, "No man's land, I see," while continuing to stare at the chart. Then he turned to face the sixth headmaster. "Are you sure you can handle this?" "Positive," said the headmaster of the six. Whoa, said Fashion Girl, cutting the call short. She turned to Morin and thumbed toward the sixth headmaster. "Who's this guy?" The sixth headmaster understood the basic terms she used, even if it was a foreign language. When Morin answered the girl, he changed his mind. "This is sixth headmaster, he's nie beterg helping Nitka fo the grim." The sixth headmaster waved once more. Clearly disappointed, judging by her slouched stance, the fashion girl glanced him up and down. What a brat. When she tipped her glasses down with a finger, the sixth headmaster's eye uncontrollably twitched just a little. Here, the dark brown eyes were now plainly apparent. This girl, if he was not incorrect, loved chocolate. As she started to wander about and observe him, the sixth headmaster could sense that she was looking at every piece of his gear and attire. She quickly returned to his side and folded her arms. "You don't cool so usurp me," she said in a somewhat arrogant tone. However, he missed 2 words in that phrase. The sixth headmaster said, "I'm sorry." Warren smiled sympathetically before the girl could say anything further. "Please excuse sixth headmaster, he is a wen nadsrup morph mistral. Ninwil to speak a new gognal is a bit lucifid for him." When Bunny Girl slapped the girl's shoulder, she coughed calmly and appeared skeptical. She looked to the towering swordsman for support. "Right, she said." He spoke in Mistrali and bowed in comprehension. "Our apologies for not knowing," the tall child said honestly. "My name is Yatsuhashi Daichi. This is Fox Alistair, Velvet Scarlatina, and our leader Coco Adele." "Nice to meet you all," said the sixth headmaster, waving again. He did that quite a bit today. The sixth headmaster expressed his gratitude in silence that someone could say anything he could understand. And no worries, it happens. Thank you for understanding, Yatsuhashi, the swordsman, replied, bowing again. At least that teen is courteous. We are huntsmen in training sent from Beacon Academy to assist Lakestone with grim extermination. The sixth headmaster went to Morin for confirmation after surveying the gathering. The elder recognized that. Morin extended a hand toward the students and said, we are discussing the matter of whether we are still in need of their service. Any other day we would have proceeded without problems, but since we've hired you, it is a bit complicated, you see. Ah, said the sixth headmaster. Lakestone is contracted to this Beacon Academy for protection against the Grim, but now there's a third party involved. Namely, me. That's about it, the elder sighed and acknowledged. He was familiar with the system. Hyde Ninja Village and all other major villages had adopted the same technique. Because towns and cities in tradescraft frequently encountered bandits, monsters, or even renegade shinobi, they negotiated with villages to employ official ninjas as security. Diplomatic difficulties accounted for the majority of requests from those in the higher grades. The hidden villages having the greatest influence would thus wind up obtaining the majority of the sources of income. Smaller communities were frequently plagued by desperation, and in order to survive, they eventually resorted to battle. One of the rare instances was the Sand Village's attack on Hyde Ninja Village. Because requests were categorized into ranks, contracts with set durations or upfront payments were necessary. They eventually resorted to using mercenaries because not everyone could afford the price. Despite being substantially less costly, they provided services of much worse quality. At the moment, the sixth headmaster belonged in the latter. He had no record at all, no residence of import, no license, and no name. In spite of everything, he completed the task promptly and effectively. Given that Lakestone chose a third party, there may have been a breach of the agreement with Beacon Academy. What a pain in the ass. He was starting to resemble a Nar, oh dear. The sixth headmaster came to the conclusion that basically you can't turn them away, and Morin acknowledged this. He shrugged, looking at the four teenagers. I suppose you can just let them do their job. In the meantime, I'll head over to the swamp and figure out something there. Morin considered the proposal and said, seems fair enough. The elder told the huntsmen in training about the agreement. By the end, at least 3 of them gave him astonished expressions. Fashion Girl used her pointer finger to push her glasses back, not bothering to hide her frustration. She essentially told him, Kul er retsum, this is Rwby meets surf noisum, in eris no eknik nai le ui teg lad enough, before huffing and leaning back. And did you alert at nimrix la asakrim? You not kul la tot guat to me. The sixth headmaster simply blinked in response to her reply, unable to comprehend what she had just spoken. He sought a translation from Yatsuhashi. He laughed and scratched his sideburn, rather than repeating what she had said. Again, our apologies for our leader's action. This is our team's first official mission without being mentored by a huntsman, Yatsuhashi started explaining. So she is a bit excited, that's all. As haughty as ever, the so-called squad leader stood with her arms crossed and her back arched. Although I must ask, are you not affiliated to any kingdom or academy? He asked. Technically speaking, Sixth Headmaster possessed his ninja ID, but he wasn't sure it would help him. He gave a head shake. No, I'm just a freelancer. After receiving his response, Yatsuhashi nodded and addressed his team with the information that the sixth headmaster was unaware of. His boredom was growing. To be honest, all he wanted to do was get the goods and go back out. After the teenagers' brief conversation was over, their leader Coco became very interested in the chart of the sixth headmaster and demanded something from Morin. Her eyes were fixed intently on the paper, and she was grinning broadly. It appeared nearly ruthless. So, said the elder, Team Coffee has come to a solution that they will head to the swamp, and you can consider your part finished. Hold on, what? At that idea, the sixth headmaster arched an eyebrow. Was he done? These fucking children. And what was Coffee's team name? He raised a hand and said, hold up, drawing everyone's attention. With all due respect. Screw you is another name. I took this job and will see it through. I don't leave my work unfinished. Half of him was irritated by these children who were still in school, and the other half of him longed to discover the origins of these creatures. Their help was not only late, but they were now insisting that he let them do his work. No one ever took anything from the sixth headmaster. His bird concurred. Hold on. Unexpectedly, the sparrow chirped loudly at the teenagers. When the bird chose to emerge, the sixth headmaster was completely unaware of it. It also sounded almost irritated based on the tone of its tweet. Could it sense his feelings, or what? Everyone in the room looked at the bird with disbelief. Bunny Girl Velvet exclaimed, oh, at the tiny creature. She even made an effort to touch him, but she suddenly withdrew her hand, appearing really ashamed. Morin gave a loud laugh. Found a new friend, I see. The sixth headmaster chuckled a little too, reaching back to scratch his nape. Yeah, little guy came for my food and decided to stay. Fashion Girl Coco gave her squad a finger snap and snorted with laughter. She smirked at the sixth headmaster and murmured something to Lakestone's elder before leaving with excitement. Her squad trailed behind, but they said goodbye in a much friendlier manner. The sixth headmaster glanced to Morin for a response once the door had been closed. Morin said, "They're leaving for the swamp now. The bullhead right outside is taking them there. You should grab your supplies and go now or they'll leave without you." At that, the sixth headmaster sighed. It was impossible for him to avoid feeling uneasy about the wetlands. He was capable of handling any challenge, but something inside him was brewed by the way those beacon pupils looked. He had no intention of watching them. Sixth headmaster said, "I'll catch up on foot," with a weary expression. "I'm more used to it." At that, Morin raised an eyebrow but didn't ask him any more questions. "Before I forget, Andre has your order completed, so be sure to find him before you leave. You can find him at the forge." After acknowledging it, the sixth headmaster started to go toward the door. "Thanks, I'll get right on it. Oh, and do be careful. We don't really know what lives in the bog." The sixth headmaster gave a thumbs up and walked straight through the office door without turning around. As they departed, the sparrow chirped joyfully.